Okay, so in this video, I'm going to show you how you can use a feature called Speculative Decoding in LM Studio. This is really cool because it can essentially double or maybe even triple the performance when you are chatting with an AI model in LM Studio. But you need to follow the best practices, you need to follow the best settings if you want to get the performance gain. Otherwise, you might not be seeing the benefit, or even worse, it can be slower when you are using this feature. So let me show you the proper way to use the feature in LM Studio. Now I'm going to open LM Studio on my computer, and I guess I'm going to give you a quick demo before we delve deeper into some nuances and settings that you probably want to know. Okay, right here, I'm going to use the model, let's say Qwen 3 with 8 billion parameters. And after that, I'm going to just send a message like, explain to me Newton's 3 laws of motion in one paragraph. Okay, now I'm not going to be using reasoning. I'll disable the thinking. Now, this is not going to affect the performance whatsoever. This is just making AI to give you the answer much quicker, but it is not going to affect the number of tokens per second. Anyway, let me just send a message and just wait for the answer. Okay, it is 40 seconds, not 40 seconds, 40 tokens per second, which is quite decent. And just to give you a hardware info, my computer is using 16 gigabytes of video memory. I'm using mid-range GPU RTX 5060 Ti, so it is quite decent in my opinion, but definitely not the fastest. Now, I'm going to enable speculative decoding for this model, and you'll see it is going to be even faster. So there are two ways you can apply the setting. If you want to make it more permanent, then you can open My Models, and then you can navigate to the model that you want to modify. And in this case, I'm going to use Qwen 3 with 8 billion parameters. And you can click this setting, go to inference, and then open speculative decoding, and then you can select the draft model. Or you can also just apply temporarily when you are chatting with the model. So right here, I can open the sidebar, and I can navigate to this configuration, and then open the menu, and I can select the draft model. So on my computer, on LM Studio, at least on my app right here, I got 3 different smaller Qwen 3 models. There is the 4 billion parameters, the 1.7 billion, and also the 0.6 billion parameters. So I will select the 0.6 billion parameters. Now it is on. That's good. So I'm going to generate or regenerate the response again, and you'll see it is going to be significantly faster. And there you go. So it is 82 tokens per second. That's double the previous performance, and that's not affecting the quality of the answer, because the way it works is essentially the smaller model is going to be used for creating a draft, and then after that, the bigger model will be used to essentially verify and use some tokens that earlier were generated by the smaller model. That's why you can get faster performance, but without sacrificing the quality of the answer. Now, there are some nuances, of course, because you cannot just pair a big model with a smaller model, and then you want to expect a performance gain, because that's not always the case. Let me give you another example. So right here, I'm going to just eject the model. I'm going to open a new chat. So let me select maybe Qwen 3 with 14 billion parameters, and I'll just use the same draft model, the smaller model with 0.6 billion parameter, this one. Oh, I guess I'm not going to use it first. I'll just send a message first, and then I'm going to be using the draft model later, just to give you a quick comparison. All right, I guess I'm going to send the same message again, like the previous one, to make it as fair as possible. So this model is actually pretty big. It is almost consuming, I believe, 13 gigabytes of video memory, so that's very close to the limit. Okay, so it is 20 tokens per second. Now I'll use a draft model, and I'm going to ask the same question again, just regenerate the answer, and you will see that the gain is not as significant. And in this case, the reasoning would be my VRAM is not big enough to run 2 models at the same time. So you need to consider the hardware that you're using, because if you are using a really big model and with a smaller model, but at the same time they're using almost all of your VRAM, then the improvement will be so minuscule. Like in this case, I jump from 20 to 26 tokens per second, which is okay, but not as significant as the previous example, even though I was just asking the same question and I'm using the same draft model. So one thing that you need to know is you must consider the size of the model in relation to the VRAM that you have on your computer. That is very, very important. Now, the second thing that you need to know is you want to make sure that you're using a big model and a smaller model with quite significant gap. If you're pairing, let's say, 4 billion models with, let's say, 2 billions, then the jump is also not going to be significant. So you want to have a significant gap between the draft model and the bigger model. And thirdly, this is also very important, you can only use a draft model with the same architecture as the bigger model that you're using. So let's say if I want to use maybe, so right here in my LM Studio account, I have multiple models. I have the models from Gemma, from Google, and also from Qwen or Alibaba. So in this case, let's say I want to use the Qwen 3 with 8 billion parameters again. And in this case, I cannot use Qwen 2.5 or Qwen 2 model. So right, I have Qwen 2 and I cannot use it because it is a different architecture, it is a different generation, different family. So it cannot be used by the Qwen 3 models and vice versa. So you want to make sure that you are using a draft model from the same generation, the same company, the same architecture. Otherwise, it is not going to work. But just because you're using the same model or the same architecture doesn't mean it can be used. Let me give you another example. So right here, I have Gemma. I have 3 different models from Gemma. I have Gemma 3 with 4 billion parameters. And, sorry, not Gemma, this translate Gemma. And I can pair it with Gemma 3 with 1 billion parameters. I actually have made a video about this and the improvement is quite significant. But when I'm trying to use this version, Gemma 3 with 4 billion parameters, not translate Gemma, I cannot select the Gemma 3 with 1 billion parameters, even though I have that model on my computer. And that's most likely because the models, these two models have different capabilities. So this one, Gemma 3 with 4 billion parameters, is a vision model. It can process image input, whereas this one is not. So Translate Gemma and Gemma 3 with 1 billion parameters can work together just fine because they're not vision models. There is no difference in capabilities. So you want to make sure that when you are downloading a model, you're choosing a bigger and smaller model, you want to make sure that you are using the same architecture and also the capabilities, like maybe it is using tool use or reasoning or vision. So these labels are very important. You want to make sure that you are using or downloading a model with the correct architecture and also the correct capabilities. Otherwise, the model might not be compatible to be used. So I guess those are a few things that you need to know. I think to recap, you need to use a model with significant gap, and you want to consider the size of the model in relation with your video memory or your memory, and then you want to use a model with the same architecture and also the same capabilities. So those are 4 things that you need to consider, you need to know when you are using speculative decoding in LM Studio. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on my next video. Have a great day.